Why hello, and welcome to a Film Spark special. This is a 7-part special to break down and deep dive into the lore of the Blair Witch and its associated films. This is part 1, where I discuss the beginning of the phenomenon known as the Blair Witch. So grab a snacky snack and get comfy as we deep dive down the rabbit hole that is the Blair Witch. Blair Witch is an American horror media franchise created by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, distributed by Artisan Entertainment, now known as Lionsgate, and produced by Haxan Films, that consists of 3 feature films and various additional media. The development of the franchise's first installment, The Blair Witch, started in 1993. Myrick and Sanchez wrote a 35-page outline of a story with the dialogue to be improvised. Filming began in 1997 and lasted 8 days. The film follows the disappearance of 3 student filmmakers in the woods near Burkittsville, Maryland, while shooting a documentary on the local legend known as the Blair Witch. After premiering at the '99 Sundance Film Festival, the film was released on July 30, 1999, after months of publicity during a controversial promotional campaign. The film went on to be a massive commercial success, and a sequel, Book of Shadows: Blair Witch 2, was released on October 27, 2000. A second official sequel, Blair Witch, was released on September 16, 2016. A series of video games, books, novels, and comics were released to accompany the films. The backstory for the film is a legend created by Myrick and Sanchez, which is detailed in The Curse of the Blair Witch, a mockumentary broadcast on the Sci-Fi Channel in '99, released prior to the release of the Blair Witch Project. Sanchez and Myrick also maintained a website at blairwitch.com, which added further details to the legend. The fictional tale describes the murders and the disappearances of some of the residents of Blair, Maryland, the fictitious former name of Burkittsville, Maryland, from the 18th to the 20th century. According to the legend, residents always blame these occurrences on the ghost of Ellie Kedward, also a fictitious person, a Blair resident executed in 1785 by exposure for practicing witchcraft. The mockumentary presents the legend as real, complete with manufactured newspaper articles, newsreels, television news reports, and staged interviews in an attempt to convince viewers of its legitimacy. According to Ben Rock, the man who created the backstory for Haxan, he took inspiration from the real Maryland legend of the woman, Moll Dyer. The legend of Moll Dyer is an oral history folk tale that has been told in the region of St. Mary's County, Maryland for decades, if not centuries. Local legend keeps that Moll Dyer was a 17th century colonist in Leonardtown, Maryland. Dates surrounding the origin of this folk tale are hazy, but the consensus is that the events took place during a February in the late 1690s, during the Maryland witch trials that resulted in multiple acquittals and 1 recorded death. There are currently no known primary sources, census data, or otherwise firmly historical evidences to prove that the events of this legend occurred. Records of Leonardtown colonial period are often considered incomplete, since many were lost in the fire that destroyed the town courthouse on the 8th of March in 1831. Despite dubious sourcing, claims made to verify the story will often cite the following. Several immigration records show that Mary Dyer, Marge Dyer, and Maligo Dyers were transported to Dorchester County, Maryland in October 1677 on a ship. The ship was commanded by Captain Thomas Taylor in the late 1600s. Moll was a nickname for Mary, along with any female beginning with the letter M. A great epidemic occurred in southern Maryland in 1697-98, and on the 18th of August 1892 edition of the St. Mary's Beacon, Joseph F. Morgan wrote that Moll lived in the area for many years, and that her cottage was burned while Cotton Mather held sway in the land of the Puritans. There were several witchcraft trials in Maryland, starting in 1654 and continuing until 1712. Rebecca Fowler of neighboring Calvert County was hanged as a witch on the 9th of October in 1685. In recent years, community efforts have attempted to revive the legend of Moll Dyer. Several links have been made, even by the St. Mary's County government, to an allegedly real woman named Mary Dyer, who was possibly born in Devon, England in 1634, and shows up in the records in 1669 as an indentured servant in the Virgin Islands. In 1677, this same woman would travel by Captain Thomas Taylor's ship to Dorchester, Maryland. It is unclear if this Mary Dyer ever resided or died in Leonardtown. These claims have been taken up and printed in several publications, including the Washington Post, though their veracity is up for debate. In 2021, Leonardtown Mayor Dan Burris declared February 26 to be Moll Dyer Day as a tribute to the town's rich history. A deadly plague, likely influenza, and poor crops had taken their toll on the small Leonardtown community, and the particularly harsh winter meant that people were fearful of not making it through the season. A deeply religious and puritanical community, the townsfolk turned to superstition, claiming that the famine, disease, and ice storms were the product of witchcraft. A meeting in the local church determined that Moll Dyer, an older woman who lived on the southern edge of town, was the witch in question and had called upon the devil to terrorize the people of Leonardtown. Events rapidly escalated and a mob was formed with the intent of running her out of town. Upon arrival, the mob surrounded and set fire to her hut, with Moll barely managing to escape and run past the crowd into the woods. Some accounts claim Moll Dyer saw the mob approaching and fled quickly, with only enough time to grab a light shawl for warmth. Regardless of the telling, she runs for miles until her legs finally give in. Knowing she would die of exposure before sunrise, she found a small boulder and placed her right hand upon it. She then raised her left hand to the moon and called down a curse on the people of Leonardtown. Days later, her body was found frozen to the stone, with her hand still held up towards the sky. The details of the curse are variable depending on the teller, but usually fall in the realm of blighted crops, infertility, child mortality, and familial misfortune. Her spirit is said to still haunt the land surrounding Leonardtown, looking for the men who forced her from her home. It is also claimed that a handprint of discoloured stone can occasionally be seen on the Moll Dyer rock in front of the Tudor Hall mansion. Many supernatural events are reported near the modern-day Moll Dyer Road, a branch off of Maryland Route 5 that is claimed to be the site of either her residence or death. Reports of shadow people, will-o'-the-wisps, a white dog causing car accidents, a thick, unnatural fog, and frequent lightning strikes are all common. As with all folk tales, the story has been passed down through the generations and changes with the telling. In 1994, Thomas Jobot conducted a series of interviews with 10 local residents, including a member of the Dyer family, a local historian, several people from families that have lived in the county since the 1600s. According to these interviews, Moll Dyer may have come from England, Ireland, Virginia, Kentucky, New England, or Connecticut. She is said to have been a spinster, a widow, a woman scorned in love, or the mother of 2 sons. She may have been born as a Dyer or married a man named Dyer. 2 people said they had heard her name as Moldy Dyer, and that she was a Native American, likely Chaptico, maid abandoned by her white lover after the birth of their child. The date of her death varied from the mid-1600s to the late 1700s, as Leonardtown was established as Seymour Town in 1660. This would place her as a very early colonist, most likely English and Catholic. Several people said they thought she had been to Maryland because it was more religiously tolerant than other colonies. Since the Anglican Church was formed about a century prior and English Catholics often fled to the Americas to escape persecution, this aspect of the tale could be plausible. According to the legend, Moll Dyer rested on a large stone before she died, leaving indentations of either hands, knees, or both behind. This rock was lost for centuries until 1968, when a writer for the Washington Evening Star, Philip H. Love, read about the legend in a local historical journal and sought to locate the rock. A grocer who lived nearby claims to have known about the rock since he was a young boy, leading Love to the location. In 1972, the 875-pound limestone boulder was moved from the National Guard from a wooded ravine near Muldiah Road to the Leonardtown Courthouse lawn in front of the old 1876 jailhouse. A simple plaque near the rock read Muldiah Rock, circa 1697. The Muldiah Rock sat in this location for nearly 50 years, until 2021, when the St. Mary's County Historical Society relocated the large stone to the grounds of the Tudor Hall, where the Historical Society has its headquarters. Today the rock sits under a plexiglass covering and has a more elaborate plaque detailing the events of the legend. Touching the stone allegedly causes people to feel nauseous, dizzy, or otherwise deeply uncomfortable. It is also said to bring illness and misfortune to one's family. Small offerings like flowers, sweets, trinket, mittens, and others are often laid near the stone to nullify the effects of the curse. Before the release of the Blair Witch Project in '99, the Sci-Fi Channel aired a 45-minute mockumentary about the Blair Witch called The Curse of the Blair Witch. The program offers first-hand interviews with several fictional colleagues and relatives of Heather Donahue, Josh Leonard, and Micah Williams, including their Montgomery College film professor. One of the highlights of the video is the first mention of Kelly Edward, the woman who would go on to become the Blair Witch. Curse of the Blair Witch was created to give credibility to the idea that the events of the Blair Witch Project actually occurred, which was how the film was marketed upon its initial release. Now, I watched this mockumentary for the first time for this series, and I must say, if I had known nothing about the Blair Witch prior, this would have been very believable. The way they interview the subjects and the production as a whole is very professional. The photos they have mocked up for the missing teens as kids during school adds that extra touch of authenticity to the claims and really pushes hard to drive the point home that yes, there are 3 teens missing, and this is their story. Overall, The Curse of the Blair Witch is a well-executed piece of mock media that complements the main film well, and when paired as a double feature with the main film, it really helps to drive the narrative that you are watching a real piece of footage shot by teens that have actually been disappeared. With that being said, this concludes episode 1 of the story of the Blair Witch. Ratings and full reviews of each piece of media viewed within the series will be provided in the conclusion episode at the end. I hope you've enjoyed this intro episode and continue to listen along the way for the full 7-part series. Again, my name is Ebony, I am the host of the Film Spark podcast, and thank you for listening.